Hi there, it's Robert, the Red Tie Guy, and for this week's Terms, Tech, and Tips Tuesday, I am going over selling price or sales price. So, what is the sales price and how is it different than the listing price? When do we see the sales price or see the listing price? What does the sales price include or not include? And last but not least, some general tips or things to keep in mind when you're comparing the sales price of other homes. But first, your favorite part, the disclaimer. This is general real estate advice to help you understand the traditional sales and general real estate advice. This is not legal advice. If you are watching this for advice on what to do on a specific transaction that you are involved in, you should consult with a real estate professional who represents your interest or with a lawyer. So, with that being said, what is the sales price or selling price? The listing price that we covered last week was where you want the home to appear on the search of available homes, where you want the conversation to start for people who are thinking of potentially buying your home. The selling price is only present at the close of escrow or after it is recorded and transferred. And in theory, it is what the home quote unquote sold for. There's a lot of context to that, but I'll get to that at the next part. When are we seeing the listing price versus the sales price will help you better understand what the sales price is. When the home has not yet accepted an offer and is active, that's the listing price seen. When it's accepted an offer and is contingent, waiting for inspections and appraisals, that is still the listing price. And after those contingencies, when it's waiting to close, that is pending and yes, still the listing price shown. During these stages, the agent's not going to reveal what offer they accepted. If you were thinking of making an offer higher than that, them admitting what price they did accept pretty much guarantees you're not going to make an offer higher than that because you now know how low they'd be willing to accept. But once it is closed, recorded, the deed is done and transferred, if you would, then what you see is the closed price. Now, states will vary on what is publicly disclosed in public record of sales prices, so keep in mind this might vary state from state on the visibility. But the sales price is that final price that was accepted. Now for the context of that, of what it does and does not include. When the home closes, and for the sake of an example, let's just say there's two homes selling for $400,000. The first home accepts $400,000 cash. No repairs, no concessions, and cash is pretty easy, so they might have gotten a better offer financed, but cash is worth something, might be a little lower. The next home also sold for $400,000. Well, they agreed to do repairs. They agreed to some concessions, and there were additional strings attached, such as the appraisal. Now, while the appraisal might not have been an expense for the seller, the other parts, the repairs and the concessions, well, you see how that $400,000 doesn't accurately represent their bottom line. Even if it was a concessions of only 1%, that's still $4,000 less in their bottom line when they sold it. If they did an additional $2,000 or $10,000 or $12,000 in repairs, you see how suddenly these two homes, both of which have a selling price of $400,000 after closing, look very different. One got their $400,000 cash, no strings attached, and probably could have gotten a better offer if it wasn't cash. More money in their pocket, but is it better for the stress? Leave that up to the seller to decide. The other one had $400,000 but was paying for repairs, paying for some concessions. You see how you can't just say, hey, well, look, my two neighbors sold for $400,000. They sold very differently. So keep that in mind when you see the sales price, that it's not going to tell you whether or not there were repairs done, or it's not going to give you the details of the condition of the home, what type of offer was accepted, whether it was financed cash or had specific terms to it, whether there were repairs. All of these affect the story, if you would, of how the home sold. And you're doing these comparisons to see how your home would sell or what kind of story to expect for when your home sells. The sales price is only one number in this story, or only one part of the marketing trends. So keep that in mind. When you're seeing the listing price before the sales price, the listing price might be changed. The listing price might be low to make more people eager to offer and expect an offer above the list price. However, when you accept an offer above the list price, the seller might actually raise the list price before the appraisal, so that if it comes back onto the market, it's reflecting the new price that they're expecting the next offer to potentially be at, or to be near at the very least. Now, what should you keep in mind as some general tips when you're approaching the sales price, or when you're looking at the sales price of others? Oftentimes there are investors who buy distressed properties, and the amount that they buy those for is shown as a sales price. Keep in mind, however, that those distressed homes are not typical sales, and that number is grossly distorted. You might look at a home that's been flipped or improved and say, well, I see online or other sources that they bought this for much, much less. I feel like I'm getting ripped off paying this much for the home. They're making a killing. Well, keep in mind when you're comparing them to the investors who buy distressed properties, that sales price might not be the same as others, in the fact that those sales price might not include that there were other liens or foreclosures waiting to be filed. That is the sales price for that particular seller, and it was done quickly. And because it was done quickly, mortgages, unpaid workers, possible tenant issues might have been paid out separately. And those are all expenses to acquire ownership of the home. If you think back to that $400,000 homes that I was comparing it to, well, those $400,000 sales include paying off any lenders or mortgages, come with certain deed warranties that title would assure. The distressed sales are not those situations. The other liens or debts on the home may be paid separately. And so when you're seeing what it was sold for, it's not including those other parts. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the selling price, that yes, that is what it's sold for, but definitely not in a traditional sale, and can be very, very different and doesn't tell a very accurate story when you're comparing it in that way to the traditional sales. Also, keep in mind that when you are doing that, any websites that give you an automated estimate of your value is often comparing you to other sales prices, but cannot adequately compare to, say, the type of financing, whether it was cash or a loan, whether or not there were repairs, whether or not concessions were offered, the time on market, or potentially the condition of the home. They're comparing everything to one number and thinking that adding more homes is going to settle that and make it reliable. When I am doing estimates for what a home could sell for and a marketing plan of what to expect or what strategies would work for your home, I'm comparing it to the stories of the other homes and typically removing the extreme cases, the home that was way up there in sales price or the distressed home that is way low. And I'm looking at those that are not only very similar to your home, but also how they sold. How long did it take? Were there repairs needed? Did they have to offer concessions? What type of financing to expect? If there are sales in your area and they are typically cash buyers, well, is that because your neighborhood has trouble getting financed offers that are of a higher price and cash offers are a lack of options? Or is it a sign that your home could potentially sell for more if you're willing to consider something other than a cash offer. Alternatively, if there's a lot of homes that were distressed and sold and are now being flipped or improved, well, keep in mind that those homes are going to be selling for much more in the future, and that the automated calculations that you see may be giving too much weight to those distressed sales that are very low. Using someone like me to interpret what the selling price of the other homes mean for you gives you a clear picture, or, as I said before, a story of what to expect when your home sells. So keep that in mind, that the next time you see a home that sold for this or sold for that, that it's only one part of the larger story. And on a final note, the listing price is largely something that is picked for marketing purposes. It might be low so that people can say that it sold above. When you're comparing the market trend of sales price to listing price and whether they're above or below each other, that's not as reliable as other trends or indicators. So keep that in mind, that while that factor of a list price or a sales price and how they relate to each other might be a sign of what the market is doing, ultimately agents control what the listing price is, and they can control whether or not they plan to put the listing price above or below expectations of what it would sell for. So that one of those is controlled and therefore not truly scientific. And with that, that would be this week's Terms, Tech, and Tips Tuesday. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to comment below, let me know what you think, and follow me for more videos with real estate advice, terms, and technology, as well as homes that are available for sale and other information about the market in Tucson. And I look forward to hearing from y'all. Let me know what you think. Let me know what questions you have. Let me know what you would like me to cover in the next video. As always, I look forward to hearing what's on your mind. Thank you.